Okay, all right. All right, well, we're starting a new series today, and for the next 4 weeks, we'll be in this series called With You, and we're going to be talking about friendships and what do we do when friends are grieving and stuff. And so, first off, I have a few pictures for us, and I want you guys, Caleb, did we get my pictures in? We're about to get our pictures in. But who has a hard time identifying people's emotions? Or who, like some of y'all are like, I can't catch the vibe when someone's sad. Like I can't read the room. But who in here is really good at reading emotions? Like you walk in the room and you're like, oh, it's tense in here. Like what happened? Or man, you could just feel the joy in this room or whatever. Some of us are pretty good at reading emotions. Others of us are not. But I have a few pictures. Hopefully, are they in there now? All right, so here's our first one. I want you guys to tell me, what emotion is this? Anger, I think. I heard someone say happy. Is that what y'all do when you're happy? You're like, oh, I'm so happy. That's very confusing, very confusing. All right, here's our next one. Disgust, yeah. Yeah, y'all are like, ugh. Some of y'all are in the lunch line and you see the mystery meat of the day and you're like, ugh, what is this? All right, here's our next one. Oh, what's this one? Happy. Do y'all ever y'all walk out of refuge and you're like, I got candy today. This is a great day. Yeah. Okay, what about this one? Sad. Does anyone cry like Kim? None of y'all? Y'all don't cry? Y'all, I very rarely cry these days. And when I do cry, it kind of looks like this. I'm like, what do I do? Yeah, I heave when I cry. It's not very good. But emotions are complicated, right? Sometimes it's really hard to read someone else's emotions and stuff. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about grief and what grief looks like with friends and how do we respond to that. Because who here has ever had a friend that was crying and sad and you didn't know what to do? They're just crying and you're sitting there there, it's okay. You're going to be okay. And they're just like, no, I'm not. My boyfriend broke up with me. Yeah, I get it. We've all been there. We don't know what to do. Number one rule of mine, you just hand them a tub of ice cream and you walk away. You just hand them a tub of ice cream and you walk away. It's really easy. But so here's what grief is. Grief is kind of a lot of emotions that you feel at once. It can be sadness, also with fear, confusion, nostalgia, anxiety, and more. So it's a lot of different emotions that you kind of feel at once. And so kind of what we experience when other people experience or are experiencing grief is we sometimes feel sympathy, so we empathize with their feelings, which just means you feel their grief as well. Or maybe you also have anxiety. Maybe you're anxious of I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. Or maybe you're this is kind of awkward. You're crying. I'm not crying. I don't know what to do in this scenario. Once again, you just slide over the ice cream tub. Or maybe you're just really confused of I don't know why you're feeling this grief right now. And it can be very confusing. So when I was in 6th grade, I had just made this friend. She was really cool. We met in art class, and then also it turned out we both were playing French horn in our band class. So we got really close my 6th grade year, and we were super close. And one day she calls me, and she's crying. She's just sobbing on the phone, and I'm like, hey, Sav, what's wrong? Tell me what's wrong. And she finally tells me, and she's like, my parents are getting a divorce. And so she's telling me this, and I didn't know what that was like, but I'm sitting here on the phone, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so my first thought was okay, I need to fix this situation. What do I do? And so I respond, at least tomorrow's chicken nugget day at school? Yeah, not a good answer. Just so you know, that's not how you respond to grief. And sometimes when people are experiencing grief and sadness, we don't always know how to respond. And so a lot of times when we've either hey y'all, right here. Sometimes when we've experienced grief or when we've have friends that are experiencing grief, people tell us things that aren't very helpful. Sometimes people will say, well, if you've lost someone, someone died in your family, that God just needed another angel. Not a good line. don't recommend it. Or maybe like something bad happened to you, like your boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with you, or your parents are getting a divorce. And someone might say, well, everything happens for a reason. Well, that's not always like a good answer too. Or here's another one, God will never give you more than you can handle. Well, sometimes it does feel like he does give me more than I can handle. And then there are plenty of fish in the sea. I've heard that one before. But I loved him. Yeah, not a good line to tell someone when they're crying. Or what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I mean, Kelly Clarkson wrote a great song about it. Or even, I know exactly how you feel, and then someone tells you a story that has nothing to do with what you're going through. And so we respond in sometimes not so helpful ways for other people who are grieving. And we think we're helping, but we're not really helping. And so there is a lot of talk of people in the Bible that are also experiencing grief. Have y'all heard of the book of Job? It looks like Job, but it's actually pronounced Job. You love the book of Job? I'm glad you like the book of Job. It's a great book. I love it too. It's really awesome. If you didn't know, Job is a character in the Bible. He's got his own book. It's pretty cool. He lives in the land of Oz. Like, that's really what it's called. It's called Oz. It's called Oz. Yeah, it's really cool. Or it's pronounced ooze. You could say Oz, ooze, tomatoes, whatever. And so Job has, his life is awesome. He's got it made. He's married to this beautiful wife. He's got 10 amazing kids. And he's got all this land, all these livestock. He is just living the dream. And then one day, Job loses his job. Ironically, Job loses his job. And then all of his animals are either stolen or killed. And then all of his children die in a natural disaster. And then this only family member remaining, his wife, tells him to give up and curse God. And Job is his life is in shambles. He is distraught over losing everything. His family, his children are dead. He's lost everything. He doesn't know what to do, but he doesn't curse God. He just sits and he grieves. And Job has a few friends that come and visit him. Their names are, let me find them. Okay, their names are Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Those are fun names to say. So if you want to name your kids anything, you can name them that. And they come, and they kind of don't give Job the best advice. They actually end up lecturing him and trying to explain his grief to him, which isn't helpful whatsoever. And so here's kind of how Job reacts to them. So he says this in chapter 16, in verse 2, he says this: I have heard all this before, what miserable comforters you are. Yeah, you're not a very good comforter when you come and you lecture someone who's grieving. Not their best thing. But really, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, we can still learn from them. At first, they actually do the right thing when Job is grieving. Here's what they do in the beginning when they come to see him. In chapter 2 of Job, starting in verse 11, it says this: When 3 of Job's friends heard of the tragedy he had suffered, they got together and traveled from their homes to comfort and console him. Their names were Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamanite. When they saw Job from a distance, they scarcely recognized him. Wailing loudly, they tore their robes and threw dust into the air over their heads to show their grief. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and nights. No one said a word to Job, for they saw that his suffering was too great for words. So his friends actually did the right thing in the beginning. They heard about everything that happened to Job, and so they got together. They're like, hey, let's go see our buddy Job. And they travel far, and they see him, and he's just, back in Bible times when you were grieving, you would just sit in a pile of ash. You would rip your clothes off. You'd wear all black and just cover yourself with soot. And so they saw him, and they did the same thing. They just sat with him in this pile of ashes or soot, whatever it was, and they grieved with him, and they sat in silence for 7 days. Has anyone ever sat in silence for 7 days? No, maybe when you were a baby. Just kidding, you probably cried some. For 7 days, they just sat with Job to comfort and be with him. And really, like, this was a good thing. This was the right thing for them to do. So they sympathized with Job. They've had compassion for him and his hurting. Then they worked together to get to where they were going so they could be with him. And then they showed up for him, which is very important when someone's grieving. You just show up, and then they empathized with him. They tore their own clothes, and they sat in ashes. And so we can really learn from their friends that when we have people grieving as well, that we too should do that we should go sit with our friends and be with them. All right, so we're going to talk more about this in our small groups of what it looks like to comfort our friends that are grieving. So small groups are every Wednesday at what time? I can't remember. I think it's 6. It's 6 o'clock. Yeah, so we'll be there. So you come, join us. There might be more Halloween candy. I don't know. They might be on sale, and we might go get some more candy for you guys. Yeah, you never know. But we'll talk more about this, what it looks like. If you also are having trouble, like, processing grief yourself, why don't you come to your small group and talk to them and process that grief with them? I'm sure your small group would be happy to sit with you and listen to what you have to say. All right, so let's pray real quick. Dear and Father, Lord, thank you for today, and thank you for each and every one of these students. Even though that they are sugared up on candy, I know there's a lot of excitement and energy in this room. Lord, I ask that you open their hearts and their ears to what you have to say to them. You are precious and holy, and we thank you for that. In your holy, precious name, amen.